and the need to engage in public debate. Mayor Garcetti and his economic staff have been working hard on plans to help stimulate the economy and support business, and we're looking forward to hearing from the Deputy Mayor today on their plans. This morning, the LA City Council will vote to fund the replacement of the city's antiquated procurement system, an interface, and create a new modern system that will expand opportunity for LA's diverse and disadvantaged businesses with public agencies and major corporations. This vote is the accumulation of years of work, and with Councilman Paul Krikorian's leadership, it will help small minority-owned and disadvantaged businesses benefit from large contracting opportunities, including major sports, entertainment, and cultural events for the first time. So as important as going back to work is, there needs to be access and opportunity for everyone to succeed in building LA's infrastructure and producing some of its most iconic events. Now, as we see restaurants and retail allowed to open their doors, the path to safely returning to work is becoming clearer. Commercial office buildings are going to have to be reconfigured to account for social distancing, increase the frequency of sanitation and deep cleanings, and temperature checks, no doubt, will become the new normal. But beyond the physical changes of office layouts, tenants and employees want assurance that new protocols will protect their health and well-being. So today, we are honored to have 4 experts who share their perspectives and comprehensive plans developed to safely reopen the workplace. Kicking off today's program will be Kelly Bacon, America's workforce lead for AECOM, followed by Lou Horn, president of Pacific Southwest Division of CBRE, Michael Medizian, chairman of Sericon Services, and we'll conclude with Billy Chung, Deputy Mayor of Economic Development for Mayor Eric Garcetti. Our speakers will address the plans, best practices, and challenges and resources available to business to implement post-COVID work plans and what the near and long-term impacts to businesses will be. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. I encourage you all participants who are joining today's call to submit your question using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to get to as many questions as time permits. It is now my pleasure to introduce Kelly Bacon, America's Workplace Lead Strategy for AECOM. As the national leader for workplace practice, Kelly has 21 years of experience helping business navigate complexity as they seek to create better, higher performing workplaces. Kelly uses her education and behavioral research methods combined with her diverse project experience to provide a broad societal context for working environments while developing tactical action plans for her clients. She is also a key member of AECOM's transdisciplinary task force regarding reoccupancy in the future of work. So please join me in welcoming Kelly.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be here and share with you all both our perspective and the efforts that we at AECOM have been deploying to help agencies, organizations, institutions nationally. So a little bit of context before I get into the specific topics. And I believe we do have a few visual aids to help guide the discussion. So a bit of context in terms of, for those of you that may not be familiar with AECOM, we are one of the world's preeminent AEC firms. We're a network of 57,000 professionals globally. And at a broad scale, we're organized in 5 primary business lines. There's our transportation and infrastructure business line. There's our water business line. There's our environmental group. There's construction services, and then the group that I reside in, which is buildings and places. And buildings and places is essentially all the design disciplines from the ground up: architecture, interiors, engineering, et cetera. And I lead a group called Strategy Plus, the workplace practice, and Strategy Plus, which focuses on business transformation, organizational design, and spatial strategies for organizations. So the slide that you're seeing here is less focused on our internal structure, but really is demonstrating the variety of end markets that we serve. So we have subject matter expertise in varied disciplines that focus on these different end markets. But what we're also able to do is bring the best practices of these different end markets to the benefit of all of our clients. So I wanted to share a bit of that context in terms of how we're organized and who and all we serve, to really share that, how we've been handling this and how we've been addressing the pandemic that we're all in is in early March and at the onset of the pandemic, and once the gravity really started to sink in globally, we have within ACOM created a steering committee that Mary, that you shared, that I've been a part of, and that brings across varied subject matter experts across varied disciplines. And we have been meeting daily since March to really share information, share subject matter expertise, and develop resources and materials to really help support our clients and really society at large. So if you could go to the next slide. One of the first, and this is a snippet of some of the materials that we've created, really, and I'm hoping that you can see the alignment with these materials along with our end markets. And really, we have a series of white papers, research, reference materials, and then also some more tactical best practices type documents. The one that you're seeing in the upper right, the highlighted in blue, is the workplace reoccupancy, and then the one just below it, the communications and change management. I was one of the primary authors of these, but emphasizing one of many authors, because again, these are complex topics, very interrelated, and it took a lot of us to kind of, put our minds together to really think through all these elements and start to get tactical and pragmatic for organizations that are starting to look at what reoccupancy and what reentry means. If you could go to the next slide. So what I'm sharing here is really just the table of contents from the workplace reoccupancy document. I also want to take a step back and broaden the definition of workplace, because when you think about it, everybody works somewhere, right? Oftentimes it's really focused on corporate or administrative offices or federal administrative offices, but we've really broadened that definition to all different types of organizations and space typologies. And whereas there's specific nuances and elements for each industry and each end market, there's some universal components that we're looking at when we talk about reoccupancy, return to work, et cetera. Now, so the elements that we're highlighting here are, we're thinking about rethinking workplace as a whole, but I do want to emphasize and reiterate that where we are at this point in time, and the efforts around reoccupancy are not necessarily the same as rethinking the future of work, as you see at the bottom. The optimist in me is hoping that the vaccine is, on the more aggressive estimates we've seen of 8 to 9 months, and even the more conservative ones of 12, 16 months. When you think about lease terms or even really kind of the life cycle of buildings, that really is a moment or snippet in time, albeit much longer than any of us would like to think about. But in the broad scale of things, that there's kind of an immediate and interim element that we're looking at. But then there's also and obviously going to be larger impacts to what the future of work are. So, as I mentioned with that steering committee, we've been meeting, we have our certified industrial hygiene team that we've been collaborating with. I'm sure you'll hear more about that expertise and that subject matter from Michael, as well as our building engineering, which are the first two topics. But really the big one in my area of expertise, and as you shared in your introduction, Mary, in terms of my background in the social sciences, is really, a big part of this. When we think about the tactics and the elements, behavior is a really big component of it. There's been a lot of talk about what that social contract is and what are the expectations and the requirements, quite frankly, of the occupants when they look to return to the physical space. And it can't be, the element of culture, whether it's geographical culture, organizational culture, really plays a big part in that. And as we were chatting early on, just how, those of us in our varied kind of day-to-day interactions, we're seeing very different, behavioral components, depending on where you are in the country or where you are in the state of California. And I think that's going to continue to evolve just as the science is continuing to evolve around our understanding of the virus itself. So behavior is a big component of that. In terms of, the response, governance, and management, what we're really seeing and what we're working with a lot of organizations and institutions is, we all have to acknowledge collectively, this is a historically unprecedented event. And there's a lot of, whether you're a small business or you're a large, multinational global conglomerate, you are having to, face a situation that is unprecedented within your organization, your business, et cetera. And so really, in terms of, and we can send this out and make this available to anybody, but as far as kind of what the response, governance, and management is really just a framework for helping organizations big and small kind of navigate all the minutia, all the details, all the things that they have to take into consideration to prepare their business to reopen the doors. And the final two, in terms of revisiting telework and reassessing site selection, that's a step towards what we see the future of work being. And I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment, when talking about telework, recognizing that only represents a small segment of the population that actually have the luxury or the ability to continue to work remotely. For those that already have been, we recognize that there are many where that just simply isn't an option. And critical staff, essential staff who have been, doing the yeoman's work and being in the physical environment on a regular basis. So, recognizing, that there's kind of a distinction and potentially a growing inequity there as we start to look at, those that have the luxury of continuing to telework. How do you integrate that in to an intentional approach to your portfolio planning, as well as site selection? But again, that's a specific segment of the population. So another point to make about this particular slide is, given the complexity and the gravity and the weight of this situation, we took the approach to really dissect all these different elements and look at all the different criteria that impact each one of the elements, so that we can then reconstruct it, put it back together with a new set of conditions, considerations, and quite frankly, value systems that are continuing to evolve. So I would hope that you would find this document valuable. But I think if we can go to the next slide and share more of what we believe to be a very kind of practical approach to when the components of returning to the office environment or a retail environment or a restaurant environment, what have you. And this is a very simplistic summary of a very complex conversation. But it's kind of three primary steps. We've broken it out in the framework of the operational, behavioral, and spatial. When we talk about the first bullet in terms of the functional processes and protocols that, again, are science-based. I mean, we and the rest of the world are following the CDC and the World Health Organizations and tracking that evolving information, that evolving science on a very regular basis. But when we talk about functional processes and protocols, there's everything from, evaluating disinfection and cleaning protocols and contracts and procurement processes. I'm certain there's members of the audience that have experienced the fact that some of these very specific chemicals that are needed for the disinfection process have really extreme lead times and longer lead times. And it's been a challenge to get some of these chemicals that are needed. But also with the processes and protocols, it's also, working with maintenance staff, revisiting maintenance contracts to ensure that the folks that are supporting your organization, your business, are up to speed and are able to, really meet the demand that is absolutely there. So the second level, or the second step, when we talk about change management programs, change management means a lot of different things. And as I touched on, the behavioral expectations, the consistent and or perhaps inconsistent, behaviors that we're seeing in different geographies and places. But change management means a lot of different things. It's about an organizational shift. It's about creating committees and, again, the governance and management framework to help navigate these decisions. But then it's also communicating to your staff, to your employees, the efforts that as an organization you've undertaken to ensure the health and safety of them and your customers and your clients, as well as, whether it's signage or key messages to make sure that the expectations of your customers, clients, your occupiers and staff are very clear, and that everybody understands and has a collective understanding of what is expected when you walk back into the physical environment. And then, of course, the last and final point here is really about the physical modifications and the spatial design. And again, going back to the idea that, you know, as we are collectively looking at what the impacts are in the future of work, you know, there's the immediate kind of physical modifications in terms of accounting for supply and demand. We've been doing a lot of supply and demand modeling for different agencies and organizations in terms of once you integrate social distancing or physical distancing standards, what is that maximum occupancy that is the comfortable or safe occupancy to ensure that the physical distancing standards can be adhered to? And I believe that Lou's going to get into a little bit more depth about that as well. But then what are some of the, you know, the physical, again, furniture, fixtures, you know, adding sneeze guards and adding these kind of, you know, interim, what I hope are interim and not long-term, but considerations to help with, you know, just having more kind of enclosed spaces and or, again, giving that confidence level that, you know, the physical environment has been modified to the extent reasonable to make everyone safe. And then, of course, the last point is about the potential funding sources, because given the economic impacts this situation or this pandemic has had, everybody has to be very, very strategic with their capital planning and their OpEx planning. So it's really a summary with how we've been organizing and supporting various clients across different industries.
Thank you, Kelly. And I think we would like you to share AECOM's help with businesses, the response, governance, and management document. I think that would be quite helpful for any, as you said, any size business can use it. That was terrific. So thank you. Now it's my honor to introduce Lou Horn. He is president of the Pacific Southwest Division with responsibility for CBRE's business in Southern California, Arizona, and Hawaii. Lou is passionate about collaboration and actively promotes the integration of multiple disciplines to ensure well-conceived strategic solutions for complex client assignments. This passion led him to become an early adopter and champion for workplace transformation, including workplace strategy, experience consulting, change management, and occupancy management. Lou has become a pillar in the LA real estate community, and we have really appreciated his work and leadership addressing homelessness and housing issues. Please welcome Lou Horn.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it. And Mary, I will say that as I started preparing my comments for this morning, I went down this road of more of the specifics around, you know, all of the individual elements that we all need to do to move back into our space. And I pivoted from there. I thought, and I'm going to deliver to you and Adam to distribute to everybody on this call, all of our intellectual property on the specifics of reentry. So you'll get access to that. We're basing that information on close to 6 billion square feet of space that we facilities manage and property management across the globe. We're also basing a lot of that data on our own experiences. We have 600 offices globally. We're in the process
The whole thing.
of moving people back in. We're way we are focused on. Mary, am I back?
You're back. You're back.
Oh, sorry about that. One of the benefits of working at home, right? But anyway, we actually shut that down. We were opening in Phoenix and we were opening in Atlanta, and we did pivots on both of those. And so each of our offices are focused on this 14-day in a row decline in cases because we're so concerned for the safety of our own employees. But what I want to talk about today and take the next 10 minutes to do is really philosophically what people need to think, what we all need to think about as business leaders before we put our specific plan in place. Our plan is available to you. I thought Kelly did a nice job in describing the services of AECOM. We also have a group that's fixated totally on move-in for large companies and small, relative to specifically where you put the decals, with the protocols on cleaning, the types of cleaning fluids to use, and all of that. And we've got all of that available. You'll see that in the intellectual property that we send out to you. So what I want to talk about, though, really is over the last 3 months, we've all gotten pretty good at Zoom, right?
Lou?
I mean, I think every CEO now around of the productivity. All right, we're going to try it one more time.
Okay.
All right, sorry about, I don't know why I've got such a bad connection here today. But, you know, I think what we've seen now is there's a big discussion with our office brokers and also with the community about, is the office space dead? Do we really need so much office space? It's actually impacted the market. And right now I've got a very large lease out for signature that I've stopped, and I'm in this business. I've stopped it because I don't know what it's going to do to the marketplace relative to, will we need more space or less? I also don't know what kind of design I want on the interior of the building. We're looking at and working very closely with the architects and making sure that, are we really building enough technology that's going to accommodate our new Zoom meetings? Or am I going to have the right social distancing or physical distancing between employees? Up to this point, though, I can tell you that, hey, this has been great for the environment. It's been great for traffic. It's been great for the work-life balance. I think we've all agreed that we've really, in some ways, enjoyed the fact that we can work from home and find this new incredible efficiency. As a company, we've had more than 100,000 Zoom calls. We're more connected now than we've ever been. So the question is the office space dead? And I would tell you that I believe that it's going to change. We've taken a survey of over 20,000 of our employees and 20,000 of our clients' employees. And I can tell you right now that to a person, our culture, someone that really so actually work from the company, fewer people, they will have more technology. There's going to be, and we're really not going to know the impact of design or the impact of this marketplace probably until the first quarter of next year. Right now, we're all learning as we're going here. But I want to pause just for a moment and speak to the whole narrative around what is it going to be? Is it going to be more space or less space? And I can tell you right now that the reason that this is working so well, I believe, is the fact that we're all in this together. We're all right now probably having this conversation with a nice blouse or a nice shirt, but we're probably in shorts and flip-flops. What's wrong with that? And the truth is, we're all also, most of our employees are pleased with the fact that they haven't been impacted, or maybe they have, by a furlough or a layoff or reduced hours. Nobody's going to restaurants, nobody's going to parks, nobody's going to the gym. What happens when all of those distractions come back into our world? I think right now, this whole thing has been successful because we are all in the same boat. Nobody's going to the shopping mall. So make no mistake, we've been running off of the social capital and the cultures that we've built over the last 10 years. And don't get me wrong, I really appreciate the social experiment that's gone on here because of COVID. But I would also tell you that right now there are, when we opened up, this was 3 months ago, we had a training program on technology. We had over 1,000 employees focused. They wanted to know one thing, all of the elements around Zoom. They learned that and it's been incredibly successful. But here's the new reality. What is the new protocol relative to our own policies going forward? And I think if you look through the CFO's eyes right now, you're going to see this is the way the math looks. And I think this is a really important equation for each of us to consider as we're going through those physical and specific protocols that we're building into our companies. Everybody knows what LEAD is. LEAD right now is, and if I go into a student session where I'm actually having a conversation around what LEAD savings are, LEAD, it's energy savings, it's energy efficiency. It comes out at the occupancy level at about $3 a square foot. What's rent in LA? In downtown LA, it's about between $30 and $40 a square foot. What's the cost of my employees that come and go every single day? It's anywhere from $500 to $700 a square foot. So the truth is, none of it matters other than the fact that I need to attract and retain great talent. Believe it or not, when we opened our office in downtown LA 8 years ago, it was the leading edge office occupancy philosophy and structure in the world. We had thousands upon thousands of people that went through and toured it. People wanted to understand what free address was and how do you digitize all of your paper. We had a health and a wellness certification. We've got different technologies that screen over keyboards every night because everybody's using a different desk, a different office, or a different bench every single day. We had street art. What's behind me, it was basically a local artist, and we have that on a mural in the wall. We did everything very, very differently. We've converted in the last 8 years 100 of our offices across the global enterprise to that same structure. It's called free address. It's like a classroom or a hotel. Somebody's using a different desk every single day. What that really did for us more than anything is it improved our efficiency, it improved our collaboration, it improved us as a thought leader. What the biggest improvement though to me was the fact that I was able to recruit and retain better employees. Because what defines my culture is really the quality of that employee. So let me walk you through a scenario, and I'm speaking to the specifics around, do I have everybody work from home or not work from home? So let's go through a scenario. If I'm competing for talent against my good competitor, and I'm offering a work from home strategy, and my competitor's got cool space, one of these adaptive reuse conversions or a thought leadership space, chances are I lose to that competitor with that more tuned in space. If I also let's go through scenario number two. Scenario number two is such that if I'm telling my new employee as they're coming back into the workforce, you're going to have the benefit of working from home permanently. What they're really listening to is great. I can avoid the commute. I've got more life-work balance. I can also improve the efficiency in my day. But what they're really thinking is, now am I part of the B team? Who's going to mentor me? Am I still relevant? What's my boss think? How will my senior professionals around the office, how will I learn how to conduct myself if I don't have them to emulate? What I'm thinking about as a leader is, how am I going to manage this hybrid operation? How am I going to stay connected to those employees? Are they going to be distracted now that the malls have opened up and the gym's open? And can I pay them less because it's more efficient? Do I need to pay them more because of the cost savings? How do I monitor their activities? I think work from home is going to stay with us forever. I do. I really believe that we're going to have that new optionality, and I think we've proven that. There's a new relationship between the employer and the employee, and that relationship is trust. We've all managed incredibly efficiently. But I can tell you it's here to stay, and it's going to be in some form or fashion. I could also tell you that right now, this is all part of a broader journey that we've all seen. So we started off at the cubicle. There was the open benching and open landscaping, hot desking, hoteling. Do we remember WeWork? WeWork was a phenomenon that basically every major CFO looked at that and said, great, I don't have to sign a long-term lease. All of this is part of this evolution, and I think that's going to be here to stay. But I will also say, as we're going through and looking at our reentry opportunities back into the workplace, I think of myself as a talent agent. My main position in my organization is to recruit and to retain talent. If I put them in a situation where they feel like a second-class citizen and they feel somewhat diminished, disconnected, or distracted, I think the numbers don't work that I mentioned earlier. So what I'm going to recommend to everybody as you're putting your plan together, as you're working with Kelly's team at AECOM or CB's team on the specifics around back to work, on how do I handle the people going up and down in an elevator? How do I handle my car valet? What kind of cleaning protocols do I need to implement? There's great resources out there with the city of Los Angeles, with the county of Los Angeles, with great firms like Gensler and CBRE and AECOM. I would also though make sure that you're cautioned in the fact that that your employee is absolutely key to your success. And it's critical to not get lost in the physical elements of what we do in order to get back to work, but also be thinking about philosophically, how am I going to do this? How am I going to manage that? And as I was thinking about my comments today, Mary, we're all overwhelmed with wanting to, number one, get back to work, and number two, what do I do? I think there's plenty of resources that will give you a plan. And we've got a green and a gold situation where we're going to have 50% of our employees, at any given time. But I will tell you, in China, where we're way ahead in this whole process, we're talking about 50% and a green team going on a 1 week and 50% the following week. Only 25% are showing up. I don't think you're going to see a full office building until we see a vaccine. I think there's going to be different protocols and ways to manage, but I can tell you it will not be a full office building until we really do see, we see more of that vaccine and those cures. So I think as we all enthusiastically wait for the county to make the big announcement or the city to make the big announcement, we have to be mindful of what does our business look like going forward. We need to be able to not only dictate the right and safe protocols, but we also need to be very careful in the way that we're managing and listening to our employees. So I know that I went a little off track relative to the protocols on specifically how we do it, but I just couldn't help myself, Mary, in making sure that we all understand that we are in a new environment here. And that I don't believe that, and everybody keeps asking me, because are we going to need more office space because of more social distancing, or less office space because more work from home? I think it's going to be a combination, and I don't think we know yet. If you ask us, or you ask other of my good competitors or the architects, we just don't know. My belief that it's going to be pretty close to the same. My belief also is that it is going to be different. We are going to have more flexibility, and there is going to be a different way of working, but do not take your eyes off the importance of culture. We can't create culture through the lens of a Zoom camera. So
yeah. Thank you, Lou. And I think I'm glad you went off your slides and talked instead about the human element, because it's a perfect match to what Kelly was talking about behaviorally. And I think at the end, it's really about people, and the culture cannot be underestimated. And like you said, different people are going to have different needs, and it's going to be some combination of the two. Yeah. So, but with that, I think it's a nice segue to Michael Medizian, who's chairman of Cervicon Systems. Michael was appointed by President Clinton to be deputy for humanitarian response at USAID from 1993 to 2000. In this position, he oversaw emergency response programs around the world, including Bosnia, Rwanda, and Northern Iraq, and helped with countries in transition from conflict to stabilization, such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, Haiti, Northern Ireland, and Indonesia. In 2000, he became chairman of Cervicon Systems, where he has been for the last 20 years. Cervicon provides custodial and environmental services to hospitals and medical centers, the aerospace industry, refineries, municipal buildings, and multi-tenant commercial buildings. Cervicon has over 1,500 employees, and my understanding is growing rapidly in California, Arizona, New Mexico, Virginia, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and Texas. Michael has served on the LA City Planning Commission from 2001 to 2005. He's on the board of advisors for UCLA Leskin School of Public Policy, and has been on the board of the LABC since 2001. Please join me in welcoming Michael Medizian. Michael.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Just a little bit about Cervicon. It's a family-owned business founded in 1973, and it's grown to about, we're going to hit 100 million in revenue later in the year. We are in 9 states, and as Mary said, we have over 1,500 employees. We're fortunate to be in sectors like healthcare, aerospace, municipalities, and commercial high-rise buildings. The first three are essential, and our workers are on the front lines there, particularly in the healthcare sector. And they've been really unsung heroes in this pandemic. We really believe in putting our people first, and we came up with a financial assistance program for them, where we gave over 1,000 employees $500 each to help pay for transportation costs, daycare, other things that they're saddled with to just get by. And we're very fortunate that we're doing well, believe it or not, in this pandemic. And we've got recruiters that are continually hiring people. We've hired over 150 people since the pandemic started, and we're going to continue to grow as this continues. We're one of the first responders to LA County in their buildings when there's a COVID exposure or thought of an exposure. We've got teams that go in and disinfect. We've been very learned in disinfecting since we've been in the healthcare sector for over 15 years. And we're very adept at infection control and prevention, and we respond very rapidly. We can come in within a couple hours if we get the call from the county or one of our clients, or even those out there that aren't our clients. They can call us, and we'll be there quickly, and we'll do everything thoroughly. There's been a seismic shift in how the I think society sees the custodial and environmental services. We are now seen as essential. We're seen as key to the reopening of buildings, facilities. What we do to reset buildings is essential in building confidence in tenants and employees for coming back to work. And we're focused on 3 reset offerings. If you can go to the next slide, and the next one. The first is protect and sanitize. We will go in a normal situation when there's been no confirmed case of COVID-19, and we will thoroughly clean and sanitize. Let me talk about the nomenclature, because it's very important that everyone be specific on this. There's been articles in the LA Times about deep cleaning, that many companies offer deep cleaning, and that's really a meaningless phrase. In the article that the LA Times wrote on it, every company had a different definition of what deep cleaning was. And it doesn't mean that you're disinfecting or dealing with microorganisms or anything like that. And so it's not a specific enough term that you should bank on if you're resetting or reopening. What we do in our basic reset is protect and sanitize. Sanitize is necessary to kill bacteria and germs, but doesn't deal with microorganisms like viruses, which obviously is the key problem in the pandemic. But nevertheless, it's important to thoroughly clean, and in food areas particularly use sanitizing chemicals. Cleaning is very important even if you disinfect. It's basically dirty buildings are a breeding ground for microorganisms. And so whether you disinfect or not, you've got to thoroughly clean. If there's been a client that's had probable exposure to COVID-19 in the past 7 days, we will go in with a protect and disinfect plus, we call it. And the disinfectant we'll use will be in a way that we clean the surfaces, horizontal, vertical, the key touch points, like doorknobs and refrigerator handles and faucets, elevator buttons, on and on. But we won't, we'll do it in a time that doesn't kill all the viruses. So that takes us to our next offering, which is ultimate protect and disinfect. And we come in with that. That's what our special teams are trained to do, is we'll come in, assess the situation, measure, really figure out what's the best way to proceed in each area of the facility. And we've got this, it looks like a Star Wars gun, and it sprays electrostatically charged disinfectant. And the electrostatic is important because it makes the disinfectant cling onto the surfaces, horizontal, vertical, and other touch points. It seeks out untouched areas that haven't been disinfected yet, and clings onto it and kills 99% of viruses. There are ways to measure how you've done this. One of them is using ATP, which ATP is an acronym for molecule, and I'm not going to remember the full name of it, but it measures the molecule that is in any living organism, and we measure it before and we measure it afterwards. It's not foolproof in that you can't definitely say you've killed the COVID-19 virus. And so we're continually trying to improve, and we're working with epidemiologists, we're working with scientists and doctors and experts in various chemical disinfectants to really try to come up with the best way to test so we can certify that we've killed the virus and that it's safe to come in. We're still working on that. It's complex, and we're moving on it every day. But in the meantime, we can, with our current testing, give a comfort level to building owners and property managers that we've got the critical part of it. We're like I said, we're the first responder to the county when they've got an exposure, confirmed exposure of COVID-19. We go into various buildings run by the Department of Health Services or ISD, and we're very active with that. We're constantly trying to improve and learn and be as mindful of sustainability as well as dealing with the pandemic. We've been in the forefront of our industry in cleaning sustainably since 2003, and we do everything with quote green chemicals and sustainable practices. So that's about all the detail I want to get into, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So Michael, thank you. And I was remiss in not thanking you from the beginning for providing an essential service. And I think the way you're describing your own employees as unsung heroes is completely accurate, because given what you're telling us about the science, you're performing, you're guaranteeing our safety as best we can, given what we know. And my guess is that's a pretty high level that you're providing, and you're providing it to a lot of different people, and you're providing it in real time. So thank you very much for that, and for building such a successful company that's turned out to be so important right now to us.
Thank you.
So now, you're welcome. It is my pleasure to introduce Deputy Mayor of Economic Development, William Chung. For over 2 decades, the Deputy Mayor has been involved in a broad range of economic development projects and investment deals. He oversees 6 departments totaling over 6,000 employees and a combined budget of $8.6 billion. It includes the Department of City Planning, Department of Building and Safety, LA World Airports, the Port of LA, the Department of Convention and Tourism, and the Economic Workforce Development Department. We are happy to have the Deputy Mayor with us today, and we look forward to hearing what he has to say.
Great, thanks, Mary. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I'll try to go quick and just hit key points, just so we have some time for questions that everyone wants to ask of us. Clearly it's unprecedented times. I think we're in this transition of, I think what everyone is talking about, of reopening the economy. I would imagine you've seen some push and pull about what public health says and just what general people say about the importance of the economy. And so, we're definitely cognizant of all of that and working with the county and deliberating those. I can say here that, you've seen that in the past few weeks, we've started to reopen some things. As many of you've probably read, a lot of that starts with the governor's office and then gets translated down to the county. And then that's where we as a city then decide what to reopen. This Friday, there's going to be more distractions, Lou. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. But this Friday, we're looking to allow day camps to open, hotels for tourism. And the distinction there is, hotels have been able to operate, but like a lot of their common area amenities have been closed, like pools. So that will be allowed to open. Also important for our just regional economy, film and TV music production will be allowed to open. And just for our own personal sanity, sports without spectators will be allowed to open. As well as gyms, zoos, and museums. So that's coming down the pike for this Friday. I haven't had a chance to see some of the specifics on the county's orders, but I would imagine we as a city will also open just as much. A little later down the pike, in terms of discussions being had now, is just live events, but again, that's going to be some far away. But we're in those discussions as of now, just so we start preparing and planning. I could say when the pandemic started and the Safer at Home order was enacted, my day job and just a lot of our jobs in our office were just dramatically changed. What I was working on before, I stopped working on. It was all about pandemic response. And then, from the public health side, but also from just the logistics and I guess business assistance side. So we were just creating things just on a daily basis. LA Protects is a I guess it's a resource and website where we just acknowledge the need for a lot of cloth masks, not necessarily N95 masks, which should be reserved for healthcare workers, but just face coverings. And having such a huge manufacturing base here in LA, a lot of those companies pivoted and just changed their business model just to produce mass amounts of cloth coverings. And also, there's a need for a lot of these businesses that were at the time essential businesses that were allowed to operate, like grocery stores, that just needed those masks. So there was a demand, and we saw a way to tap into that supply, and so just kind of married the two. And we have a website up called LA Protects. A lot of the apparel and garment manufacturers are on that and doing a great job in terms of producing a lot of those masks. And again, that's where small companies and even large companies, they tap into that resource and get connected directly to a manufacturer to buy those masks. As well as just our own need from the city side of, we've bought our own masks, but also we've been working with the hospitals throughout this time of not only just preparing them and just allowing them to operate and having those beds available to the patients that need it the most. But again, they need PPE. They're the frontline workers and they're dealing with this pandemic on a daily basis. And so I activated Gene Soroka to be our chief logistics officer and armed him with about $30 million and just to go hunt and find massive amounts of PPE for the hospitals in a way in which, with that power of procurement, he was able to, and we were just getting a lot of inquiries and a lot of leads. That market was just the wild, wild west. But eventually we were able to find some legitimate leads and get some actually good N95 masks and KN95 masks, and in which we'll sell to at cost to the hospitals. And we're talking about a lot of them mostly are smaller hospitals that don't have the resource or the time to go out in the market themselves and procure these masks. And so we did it for them. So that's been successful to us. And now, as we're kind of reopening new businesses, in fact, just restaurants, dining in restaurants just recently, we've kind of heard a lot from the restaurateurs complaining about, not necessarily complaining, but just pointing out to the fact that if they're allowed to open at 25% capacity, that doesn't make a difference. That's just not tenable for a business to operate at 25% capacity. And so there was a lot of work from that industry, Jerry Greenberg especially, working with the county, and just talking to our office, and he's kind of taken up a lot of that responsibility and coming up with reasonable guidelines that the county and the city put out to make it more tenable for those restaurants to open. Now, granted, that's really a decision for each restaurant. Some restaurants are still not comfortable with opening, and that's fine. I think a big theme that we're telling a lot of these businesses is just because you're allowed to open doesn't mean you have to. You have that choice, but understanding that it's going to take a process. And so with the restaurants, with the limited capacity, we just announced the LA Alfresco program, which basically allows restaurants to have their customers dine on public right-of-way, on sidewalks, on parking spaces, on parking lots, much like essentially what other parts of the world just do on a normal basis. We're kind of pioneering that, and that's kind of a multidisciplinary effort led by DOT, but involves planning and building and safety, public works. And so that's kind of a free program that we're allowing, a temporary free program that we're allowing for restaurants to have that flexibility. But also just in terms of direct assistance to the businesses, because being shut down for an extended period of time, is obviously doesn't bode well for businesses. And while there are some federal programs and there's a lot of friction there, we activated one of our departments, EWDD, led by Carolyn Hall. We tapped into a previously running program. It's a microloan program. We set aside $11 million for that program for small businesses affected by COVID, $20,000 up to each business, and that's ongoing now. But now we're talking about transitioning that program into a grants program, because obviously, which business is ready to take on more debt? That's just not sustainable in the long run. So hopefully, there's an opportunity to convert that program to grants, as well as put more money into that program. EWD has been talking to Councilman Price about this as well, and he seems interested. And we're hoping the rest of the council leadership kind of see the benefits of this program, which we think again will be beneficial to the businesses. I think going forward from now, obviously we're trying to balance reopening the economy with I'm mindful of just what the cases are. And one of the targeted metrics that we track on a daily basis is the hospital's capacity to take on more patients. I will say, and you've probably heard either the mayor, Dr. Ferrer, or Supervisor Barger say, as cases arise and that our health infrastructure gets taxed, we're probably going to have to take a few steps back. And so that's why we always caution about being cognizant about wearing face coverings, about exercising physical distancing, and just being prudent about kind of our daily activity and who we interact with, and we encourage people to get tested. It's free. You can sign up, you get the results in a couple of days, if not sooner. And that's available to everyone in the city. So I definitely encourage you to do that. So we're, back to my point, we're tracking just the availability of hospital beds and ICU beds and ventilators on a daily basis. So, we're still continuing to open. We are starting to see cases pick up a little bit, but we'll continue to open. But we also recognize that, schools, daycare, that's an important part of allowing people to go back to work. And then, obviously the industries are hit hard. And so, like hospitality, tourism, retail. And so, we're looking at ways to kind of bring back those industries, of just trying to create more demand and just get money flowing into the local economy on the spend side. And so, from the city standpoint, we're looking at more programs to inject more dollars in the local economy. But again, we're also talking with our state and federal partners to see what other programs we can provide. There's an important Federal Reserve meeting today that we'll see how that trends. Obviously, rates are still low, but they're going to have a nod on what the economic outlook will look like. It's hard for us to take a snapshot of where we are in our recession, just because the data just lags a month at least, and so we don't have a clear picture where we are now. And I'm not sure we're at the bottom of it yet. I will say the city's finances are not in good shape, as well as the rest of the economy. And so we're going to have to look at really targeted ways to try to boost our economy, basically do more with less. And that looks at, looking internally about cutting red tape. From the planning side, we're re-looking at CUPs that are pretty restrictive on restaurants and bars, but acknowledging they're there for a reason. We're looking at ways to remove discretionary procedures from the entitlement process, just to make it quicker, to keep development going. We're looking at ways to standardize guidelines for ADUs, again, just to make it quicker and easier for anyone willing to build an ADU, as well as a streamlining approach to inspections that we're still looking at, but we're hoping to make some progress, and just making it easier and quicker for people to get back to work and re-energize the economy. So, I mean, I think we've looked at, the New Deal back in the Great Depression, what Franklin Roosevelt did. And, some takeaways there is, obviously there were a lot of investments in public projects. That's something that we're looking to do as well. But also there was a lot of investment just in human capital. There was a lot of programs, Social Security, a lot of safety net programs that were born from the New Deal. And what we do have now in abundance is human capital. And we're looking at ways to really position that in the best way forward, whether it's train them in the right way, and maybe couple that with some of the public projects that we have. And so we're looking at it pretty holistically. So I'll stop there, and I appreciate talking to you all today.
No, that's terrific. And I think particularly the last things you said about streamlining and making things more efficient and easier and getting infrastructure projects going is really the key. And I think this Alfresco thing is super exciting because we've always wanted LA to be more of an outdoor restaurant scene. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for procuring the masks to the hospital employees that needed it, because certainly somebody had to step up and do that. And for the small business program that you launched, I think you've done everything you can in a very short period of time, and will continue to. So now I'm going to exercise my moderator prerogative and just do a few questions. Some people will stay with us, some people will go, but this will be frozen in time in terms of it being recorded, so people can view it at any time. I want to start with Kelly. Kelly, I want to go back to you about what Lou said, because I think you might have some comments in terms of responding to what Lou said about the telemarketing potential and the inequities that could occur in an organization, and then how to address that.
Great, thank you, Mary. Yes, so I'll start by saying that I agree with a lot of, and I appreciate, Lou, the philosophical element that you brought to this conversation, because as much as we have to be pragmatic and tactical, we are, thinking about and revisiting some really, critical values that we have. But one of the things, and also to clarify, I am and always have been an advocate of teleworking, remote working, what have you. Prior to the pandemic, we've worked with clients across the globe in integrating telework as a holistic part of the portfolio. And it's not necessarily, the Tuesday, Thursday type structure that maybe we might see with our federal clients or whatnot, but it is more about results only working environment or, and I agree with the trust element. It's a different mindset in order to allow staff to work remotely and kind of come and go as they please, with a focus on the end results and outcomes. However, where I worry and where I've been increasingly worried is that I'm seeing some similarities in the post-2008. And for those of you, who were, me personally as a practitioner in 2008, from 2008 to 2010, probably, 95% of my projects were about consolidation and density. Because of the fall in the market, around that same time, some really great, valid research came out that, the power of collaboration. And I think a lot of folks kind of took the collaboration research with the financial recession and used it as an opportunity to squeeze as many people into spaces as they could. And I do think it led to some challenge design situations. Where I worry specifically about the pendulum swinging in organizations, and I agree, people have seen the efficacy, and those that felt that maybe telework weren't for them are realizing its efficiency. But I worry about the potential inequities that might start to form. And as a leader who oversees teams in multiple locations, I'm going to use my colleagues in New York City, for example, who simply don't have the level of space, right, to make working remote as comfortable as it needs to be. And I think that as organizations start to look at a portfolio level, and they should be looking at integrating teleworking into a part of their portfolio planning, but I think there really needs to be a discussion around subsidies of, home office technology, home office furniture, ergonomics. And, at some point when we do start to get to really highly dense markets like New York City, like Detroit, like others, where space is at a premium, I think organizations need to start to ask themselves, can they reallocate that savings in their real estate portfolio? Are we going to start to look at subsidies for cost of living? Because it's just, those that are in, longer tenure, higher positions of authority, higher salaries, quite frankly, can afford the space in their home to telework, but there are those that cannot. And I worry about it going too far on the other end of the spectrum. And I think we need to have a dialogue around that as a society before we just assume that we can, shrink our portfolios.
Mary, do you want me to respond?
Yeah.
Listen, I think it depends on what you do. I mean, if it's back office and you're focused on, back office functions, I think it's fine. I think if you're in an environment where you need a level of collaboration and communication, I think it's going to be critical that you have some sort of touch point there where you have the opportunity for serendipity and you've got the opportunity for connectivity for other people. When we went through and merged everybody together in these individual offices and didn't have the four walls of individual siloed office space, we actually became a better company because we had a lot more collaboration. We also recognized that we needed to have reasons to come into the office. So we had programming, much like you would do in a retail environment. We had programming where we had opportunities for people to collaborate. We structured our physical design so that people would connect in the morning around coffee. But there was the serendipity of that connecting with each other was really important. I agree with your comment, though, on a couple of levels. Number one, if you're in New York and you're in San Francisco or places where there's a lot of density around living space and you've got two roommates, that's not a real practical application. I couldn't agree with you more. Today also, and during this pandemic, if all of a sudden you're taking care of your children or you're a caregiver to a parent and you don't have another alternative because of the pandemic, you don't have the ability to come into the office and you should be given the option. So I do think there's going to be those elements where we absolutely have to look at on a one-on-one basis. But I do think that people are going to want choice and they're going to want the freedom, this newfound freedom because of this new relationship with their employer, that they have the ability to work from home. They are productive, but let's not take our eye off of the importance of that collaboration and connectivity in a place where you can build culture.
Thank you. And then I just have two quick last questions. One is to you, Michael, regarding how do you stay current with the science, and how quickly can you mobilize what you learn to what you're doing? And then for the deputy mayor, we're getting asked very specifically, who's eligible for your small business loan/grant program? Michael, go first.
Okay, we, like I said, we meet with epidemiologists and scientists and experts in the various disinfecting chemicals about 3 times a week. We've got a Zoom meeting with them, and we're, like I said, we're trying to come up with tests that are that guarantee that we've taken care of the virus. We're not there yet, but we're getting close, and it's going to take a lot of data points that is going to take some time after we've finished doing our electrostatic spray of disinfectants and cleanup. But it's going to be much more complex than just getting an app or a wand or something that measures one place. We're going to have to get samples of many places nearby in order to be sure. We've got some recommendations for better maintaining the buildings after the disinfectant is there, because someone can walk in again, 4 hours later and spread whatever. So we would recommend a day porter or more that are every 2 to 4 hours disinfecting touch points. We would recommend providing disinfectant wipes in busy places around the facility, so that and hand sanitizer, so that people get used to using those constantly during the day.
Right.
And we've got some cleaning things that we would do differently, and we're always learning as we go. We're making a more perfect delivery.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Michael. Perfection is a good goal in this case. And Deputy Mayor, you have the final word. Who's eligible for the small business loan / grant?
For that program, I think for that 20,000, it could be used for working capital, so like staffing and rent. And in terms of eligibility, it's we kind of look at it for small business. So any business that's located in the city of LA with fewer than 100 employees that has been negatively impacted by COVID. That is, I will also say, that's in good standing with their business tax. We've kind of kept it pretty broad, so that's really the only specific criteria.
Well, I want to thank you all for your presentations today and for your interactions with each other. I think this has been really informative for people, and we appreciate your time. In fact, we appreciate your extra time. We look forward to the opening, Deputy Mayor, this Friday, and we hope it goes well and is safe. And I need to now shamelessly plug next week, where we will have the State Insurance Commissioner with us, Commissioner Lara. There are a lot of issues around risk management and insurance for companies, particularly since COVID is not something that people are insured for, or most people are insured for. So join us next Wednesday, June 17th at 10:30, and we will discuss insurance. Okay, and with that, Thank you all for being with us today. Thank you again, AECOM, for being our host. And it was a pleasure to get to know you, Kelly. Be safe in your drive across the country. And thank you, Lou, for going off script, because that was very helpful and interesting today. And we really appreciate your time. Thank you. And be safe today. Stay safe and well, please.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mary.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mary.